So that's just some background for this call. We've then gathered together a group of what we're calling second wave or current wave bioregionalists, Melina Angel from Colombia, Joe Brewer, also from based in Colombia, Samantha Power, based in the Bay Area, and Daniel Christian Wahl, based in Mallorca. So the plan for today is to hear from reflections from the first wave, and then reflections from the second wave, then maybe a little bit of conversation amongst those two waves, and then open it up to you all for questions and inputs before a final kind of closing reflections round. And so that'll take us through these 2 hours. So I think that sort of gets our preliminaries established. I would love to stop talking now and really hand it over to the folks from the first wave. And what we've asked, the sort of prompt would be, what learnings from your bioregional work would you like to share with those of us on the call, with the current wave of bioregionalists, with the current impulse of this movement, if you will. And I wanted to start with Laura, and Laura and Anna agreed that Laura would voice their perspectives collectively. So Laura, I'd like to start with you, and then maybe Tad and David after that. So Laura, we'd love to kick things off with your reflections.
Well, thank you, all of you. I'm Laura Curi. I live now in Mexico City, around the rainforest, as we call this big forest that gives water to 40 million people in Mexico, around Mexico. So this is a very important place because of the many people that lives here. So we've been working with the bioregional perspective, based on the watersheds. In this area where I'm coming from, we have 3 different watersheds that borns from the same forest: the Balsas, the Anahuac, and the Lerma River. So we are working, first of all, listening to the local people, because they are the ones that has been there from all ever. So they have a very good knowledge. So I invite you to listen to the local people around where you live, because they have the ancient knowledge, and that's very important. And we also make a very good agreement with the politicians, with the scientifics, with the activisms, with everybody that is doing something for well in this bioregion. We are creating a movement. For me, bioregionalism, it's very hard, this word in English. For me, it's the creating of the network. And this network is based on the knowledge. No? So we know the place, we know the people, we know the conditions. We make a beautiful network of people, as I tell you, many youth. We have to have jóvenes, youth. You understand? I say jóvenes, youth, is that right? Okay, that's very important, that you get a lot of youths in your movement, and also the elders, no? And as I tell you, people that is doing things for the good, for the well, for the life in your place. It doesn't matter in which area. Doesn't has to be specifically environmentalists. They could be artists. They can be poets, or they can be farmers, or people that works for spirituality. I don't know. In any area. But the people that is working for your place, they are already a bioregionalist. And another thing that I think sorry, my English today is not very well, but it's important that you make for yourself the next questions. Where is my water coming from? And where does my water goes when it goes out of my house? If you have that question answer, if you answer that question, you are start being a bioregionalista. So maybe I stop here and we go with David or Anna, and we can make a kind of conversation. Thank you, you all guys. And whenever you want to come to Mexico, let me know. And here we'll have a good introduction to the Mexican bioregionalistas. Thank you.
Tad or David, do you want to go next?
I like Tad to go next, for he's
Great.
the
Tad,
he's the instigator. If that's okay with you, Tad.
Sure. Wow, I wasn't expecting this large a crowd. I was thinking it was gonna be a small little gathering. I made a very concerted decision 15 or 20 years ago to dedicate most of my time to climate change. So I have been focusing on decarbonization for most of the last 15 or 20 years, and I put my bioregional work a bit on a back burner. But I'll tell a story that might be instructive. An anthroposophist friend approached me a couple of months ago, work of Rudolf Steiner, if you don't know anthroposophy. And he wanted me to give him an introduction to bioregionalism because he was just intrigued by the concept. And I gave him, as best you can in 5 or 10 minutes, a description of what bioregionalism is. And he said, "So what's your bioregion?" And I said, "Well, what I'm using now is as my home is the Connecticut River watershed." And he asked me to define watershed and asked me to like draw the boundary of the watershed. And I said, "Seth, that's not the point. It's not about replacing one set of lines on a map with another set of lines. It's about a change in consciousness. It's about becoming a healthy part of the place where we live and not continuing a pattern of destruction and degradation." And he had a hard time with that. He wanted me to give him a definition of, or a distinct outline of our bioregion. And finally, I said, "Seth, this is not something that's going to happen in like a quick revolution. We're talking about a 1,000-year plan." And there was a stunned silence. And he said, "Oh." And with that, I'll pass it on to David.
Right. Well, thanks, Tad. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Bill, and all who have joined this morning. It is extraordinary moment of I feel, and for me, and I'll speaking for myself. For me, this confluence of the generations or the waves that I like the term waves, going back, into the early 70s, early to mid 70s. This idea of bioregion just kind of popped out, like a lot of incredible things did in the period from 1971, 71 to 74. Astounding things emerged from the kind of like noospheric realm of the human presence, which I often put together under ecocentrism, ecological way of looking at reality and all things. And bioregionalism is the deepest cut or deepest iteration of ecologically centered consciousness. But my experience is mostly with organizing in the bioregional congresses, and coming out of the Ozarks and the Ozarks Area Community Congress, which started organizing that in 75 or 76. And it took a long time to bring together, but it was a delightful journey to get there to the first bioregional Congress that I'm aware of, the Ozark Area Community Congress 1 in October of 1980. From then on, it's been an astounding ride where so many things were generated from that nexus. I won't go into all the history, but it did lead to the Continental Congresses, the modality of the Congress being an organizing tool for the bioregional movement, and the exposure of a vibrant exposure of literally over time, thousands of people to the idea of bioregionalism, always in a peer level association, kind of devoid of stars and big names and people on the marquee, but rather just as the assumption that whoever is called to gather in the name of this incredible way of looking at reality and living in reality, the ecological reality of the earth, which is the reality of the earth, that horizontal interchange of vibrant, ecologically minded energy was so electrifying in every instance that we gathered, from the Congresses all up and through the last Continental Congress, number 10 at the farm in Tennessee in September of 2009. And that is a marker for when the first wave seemed to, which was strongly influenced by the development of the organizing modality of the Congresses, subsided. But then from there, the second wave was kindled or began to rise, and here we are, bridging the two waves. It's an incredible realization of something that I've been hoping will happen for a long time, and I want to thank everyone for joining here today in this context.
Thank you so much, David, Tad, Laura, Anna. I also want to acknowledge you, and I know that you said that you wanted to have Laura speak for you, but I do want to just give you the opportunity, if you do want to share a few words now, fine if you don't, but just checking in with you and seeing if you'd like to voice yourself.
Thank you, Bill. Of course. Hi, this is Ana Ruiz, also from Mexico City, bioregion, the bioregion of the Anahuac, where three beautiful watersheds confluence, and it's really a water forest originally. And we have learned so much of Laura training theoretically on bioregionalism, but also practically, as she said, involving all sorts of people of the society into understanding where we live, what the place is, where's our water coming and going. And I currently work with her and with other 50 people in class action lawsuits to prevent genetically modified corn to be sown in Mexico, and we have gotten that injunction from the courts since 10 years ago, and we are defending that. And this class action aims not for money, but to stop the damage for good. So that's my most important bioregional work right now, and it definitely involves artists, scientists, farmers, and people from all sorts. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anna. Thank you to all of those of you in what we're calling the first wave here. Thank you for the foundation setting with what you've just shared, and of course, the foundation setting from our prior conversation. David, in particular, thank you for sort of establishing the sort of transitional flow from the first wave, kind of a denouement or a pause maybe in 2009, and leading into sort of a rebirth, if you will, in this what we're calling a second wave. So what I wanted to do is invite those folks who we've asked as representatives of the second wave. Of course, this is not exhaustive. There are so many people that we could have called on, and we just wanted to try to create a kind of diversity of voices here. So what I'd like to ask you to reflect on is what learnings from both the recording of the conversation and these initial reflections from wave one, what resonates most deeply with you and the work you do for application in your own bioregional work context, within your own bioregion and cross bioregional work. And I think just going in alphabetical order by last name is one way of doing it. So I guess I'd want to ask Melina to start, and then Joe, Sam, and Daniel after that. So Melina, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Bill and Ralph and everyone. And thank you for this conversation, because actually it's something that we have been missing, actually, like this historic context of the rising of the earth through people that bring us to the validation of what we also are feeling, are working for. So it is really important, this conversation, for that. And I appreciate a lot to have listened your conversation before, and I started to see the Daniel's talk with David, and trying to really get into what was happening and why I didn't know before. So for me, this bioregionalism is about humans finding our habitat or our scale in the planet, and I think that this is a natural life emerging through us, trying to bring acknowledging our belonging to the earth, and to find our bioregion, for me, is very, very important in order to really feel connected with the planet. And I think that the strength and the power of people like all of us, and many others, and indigenous people, and just bringing forward this feeling of belonging to the planet, and just saying, this is our scale, and we are just knowing this part of our beloved planet as much as we can, and trying to really feel roots here, and connect with people, and connect with other species, and understand. And that is something supernatural for me. Like a jaguar has its own scale, its own, and an ant has their own scale. So it's kind of really coming back to feel as natural we are. Like we really are natural beings, and everything we have done is natural, even cities or whatever, so the point is how to make it better, how to make it ecologically coherent with our planet, so we can stay and we can build life and whole life for everything, and for generations and generations and generations and generations. So very appreciative to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melina. And we've already gotten some feedback on there about the formulation of finding scale. So thank you for that. And also, I don't know if I misheard whether it was acknowledging our blood into the earth or our love I don't know if I heard it wrong. So I just, which was it, or was it something else, Melina, before we go over to
Our love for, like for ourselves, like for being who we are, like a really being human with appreciation, like loving each other, loving planet, love.
Thank you. And often that will prompt Zoom to do a cascade of hearts down, but it didn't do it this time. So, oh, there we go. Okay. Joe, over to you, and then Sam and Daniel, you're next up. Joe.
I want to very briefly just tell a defining part of my life, which is that I was born in November of 1976 in Springfield, Missouri, only a few miles from where the first Ozarks Congress occurred in 1980. And I actually grew up really feeling disconnected and disliking where I was. But it was the dysfunctions of the human culture. And I would escape into the woods and into the creeks and into the caves of the Ozarks. And I couldn't wait to leave. And so when I went to college, I'm like, I'm out of here. Goodbye, Ozarks. Goodbye, Missouri. And I tried to find ways to redeem my past. Like, what was there about Missouri that was good? Well, we had Walt Disney. We had Mark Twain. There are some interesting things. And what's ironic about all of that is, as I went out into the world, I gradually came to discover that the best qualities of me that are cultural, not the best parts that are my own, like genetic identity, the parts that are biological, the best parts of me that are cultural are Ozarks culture. And I really affirmed that a few months ago when I went to my sister's memorial, and I got to see my Ozarks friends and just how loyal they are to each other, and how much they don't even need the word bioregion to be bioregional, because they're just so deeply embedded in their place. People who don't move away, I ask a lot of people as a provocation, I say, do you know where your bones will be buried when you die? And most people can't answer. But all of my Ozarks friends are like, right there in the family plot, where I'm gonna have my ashes spread in that river, where I'm going to that cave, and they know. And so the Ozarks bioregional movement is this profound paradox right now, because as I travel around the world, engaging with people about bioregionalism, guess which bioregion most young people don't know? They don't know the Ozarks. They know Cascadia or some other ones, and they don't know the Ozarks. I find this very interesting. And so I wanted to reflect back some of the things that I heard, and I want to acknowledge my partner, Penny, who's here on the call, because Penny and I have been doing bioregional activations for the last 2 years, where we're invited into those face-to-face gatherings in real local communities. Like you said, Laura, it's the local people. It's the local people. And as you said, David, it's not the leaders on the billboards. It's the everyday people who love their place. This is what we discover, is everywhere we go, we discover elders of the bioregional movement quietly going about their work, and younger people being bioregional without the language or the history. Some of them have it, but most of them don't. And what we find is that the human-to-human relationship is where the power is. And when organizations come together to form organizational alliances, it's just very fragile and more superficial. Whereas real human relationships are so profound and deep. And so, David, I was so struck by the way you described the original bioregional congresses, that if you're going to come, you have to come for all 8 days or 5 days, whatever the length is. And if you're in the media, if you want to report on it, sorry, you have to come for the whole thing, or else you're not allowed in the door. And so what that signals is, it's the human beings who are spiritually devoted. And it filters out all of the noise of professional networking and political posturing and status and prestige. All of that is weeded out. And what you're left with is the pure spiritual core of ecological living. And I think that has been the secret power, the superpower of the bioregional movement, because it's continued to be true all the way up to the present day. And the other thing that I wanted to reflect back in what I saw, because I've been living in Colombia for 5 years and I was in Costa Rica for a year before that. And this relates to what Melina was saying. People here in Colombia, most of them do not know about the bioregional movement. They don't have the word bioregionalismo, they don't have bioregionalism, but they do have words like territory, like ancestral lands. They actually have very, very strong bioregional frameworks. Very, in many ways, stronger than the modern bioregional movement. And here in Colombia, that's definitely true because most of the indigenous people are still on their ancestral lands. Whereas in North America, most of the indigenous people have been forced onto reservations very far from their direct land connection. The Trail of Tears is a famous example. People from Georgia pushed over to Oklahoma, 1,500, 2,000 miles from their ancestral lands. Whereas if you come to a place like Colombia, the indigenous people are still, most of them are still on their ancestral lands. So the bioregional language it clicks very quickly. It's not language that they have, but once you explain what it is, it's like within 2 sentences, oh, we have a name for that. We do this. And we find we're talking about the same thing. So it's a very natural connection. So just wanted to reflect those couple of things back, deeply validating what you did before. What was happening in the 80s and 90s is what is working now. And so thank you so much for laying the groundwork for us. And I see I've excited Laura to say something.
Yeah, Laura, if you could go ahead, and Sam and Daniel, if you'll allow just Laura to chime in here, and then we'll go over to you, Laura.
Okay. Well, I have some ideas that are coming from all the comments you are saying. Well, one thing I want to tell you is that in Mexico, the bioregional movement haven't stopped. It's like we don't have a second wave. We still be on. We have little waves coming. We have stopped. We have been stopping making our congresses. We still do it. So I think that one of the good things that the bioregional movement did in Mexico is that we leave the youth to take the organization. So the elders that we got tired, we didn't do it. The youths are keep on doing it. So it's a second wave, mostly in the north, but in the south, it's still. Another thing I want to say is, of course, the bioregional movement, it's an antidote to the globalization. We can be lost very easy in the globalization nowadays. So bioregional movements give you roots. It doesn't matter where you're born. It's important where are you living and what's the complement, what's the compromise, compromiso, no sé cómo se dice, Ana, compromise that you have to the place you are living now. It doesn't matter where you come from. It matters where you are living now and what are you going to do for that place. So that's for me the most important topic of the bioregional movement, the compromise that you do for the place you are. And one other thing I want to say, that in Colombia, there's a very beautiful bioregional movement, but it's called El Llamado de la Montaña. They gather every year, and they have been growing more than all of us, because as Colombia has had a very hard war situation for many years, they are survivors. For them, bioregional movement is very important. And Joe, if you want, we give you then some contacts, but it's a very beautiful, and it's one of the best bioregional movements in Colombia. Yeah, that's all I have to say for the moment. Thank you.
Gracias, Laura.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Laura. Sam, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill. Thank you for that, Laura. One of the things that's coming up for me, and listening to the first wave this morning and listening to the conversation that that was recorded, that we all listened to, is the focus on beauty. The focus on beauty and ecology and culture and food, and the beauty that comes from developing trust, the trust that my friend David, for example, has been weaving in his bioregion for 45 bioregional congresses now, and how that beauty can be a guiding light for all of us in these confusing and complex times that we're living in. And that bioregionalism really directs people and energy, and I hope eventually financial resources, towards that beauty, towards what people living in a place, in relationship to place, in service to that place, feel can create the most beauty and alignment with the ecology and a culture of a unique bioregion. And few other movements in this moment, I feel, are driven by a pursuit of beauty. So I think that's what has really drawn me to this one. And also that we have so many elders who are so generously sharing their wisdom and are still at it, still, working at it with conviction and power and clarity and focus after all of their decades of organizing. I find that so inspiring as someone who's relatively new to this this wave of the bioregional movement, but committed for life, certainly. And I think some of you know my work has focused on finance and this new design for a financial institution that myself and my co-author call a bioregional financing facility. And a bioregional financing facility is my hope, my prayer for how we bring more resources to this incredible movement. And while the resources are important, they're kind of an Aikido move to bring people into deeper relationship with their place, right? And to move to an economy where financial resources are not so central anymore, that people are living in a more relational way, and the finance becomes, it's in the background. It's not as important as their relationship with their place. So that is something that I've certainly learned from listening to the first wave and their experiences, and reading all the literature and reading some of the programs from the early bioregional congresses, that this is the movement is really in service to a new way of seeing and being, and reconnecting people with relationships to their fellow community members and to their place. And my work is trying to bring financial resources to support the strengthening of those relational webs. And I think I will leave it there and hand it over to my friend Daniel.
Wow, what a lovely gathering, and what in our small little bubble, in a small little world, it feels like a historical gathering. So thank you very much for organizing it. And thank you for everybody who's walking this path. There's so much I could say, but there's a couple of things that came up just with regard to first wave, second wave. I would say, if anything, it's the second and the third wave that we're talking about, because we will take 90% of the wind of this movement out of our sails if we don't anchor bioregioning as a practice in the history of our species and call it the survival pattern that helped Homo sapiens evolve. Meaning bioregional regeneration, or being keystone species within the bioregional ecosystems we inhabited, is all our ancestry's pattern of inhabitation in the planet. And the first wave, Peter Berg coined that beautiful word, re-inhabitation. So he was already clear that that was the second wave. It was coming back to our ancestral pattern of being a regenerative expression of place rather than an owner of place. So just in terms of how we frame this, I think it's important that we anchor ourselves that deeply. And I also remind people about that same thing with regard to regeneration. If how many of the good people, even on this call on and beyond, people like to say regeneration is a concept. If you talk about regeneration as a concept, you take the energy away from it. You make it another new thing on the block that is trendy for a while and gets substituted by another adjective a little bit later. But if you understand that regeneration is happening in every cell of your body, in your stomach, in your bones, in every ecosystem around you, then we claim it as a biological process. And we claim it ourselves as biological beings as part of that process. So that's just I think, important as we all speak to other people and enlist them in this to be aware of that. And then the other thing that every time I hear the word bioregionalism, my friend and mentor Satish Kumar comes to mind, who in his wonderful way once said to me, Daniel, every ism is a schism. And framing it as bioregionalism is inviting other people to saying, I'm not part of that movement. It's just a movement out, in, out, us, them. So again, bioregioning might be more process, more pattern oriented, and allows us to anchor it historically. Just reflections on language. And then having listened to all these wonderful, like the recordings and what people have contributed so far, I mean, there's a number of things that struck me. Yes, this is a 1,000-year work, and at the same time, it has urgency in the next 3-4 decades. So it may become a 1,000-year work, and I believe that right there we can bring people, and this is echoing a lot of what has already been said, that it's about people re-inhabiting place again. It's about people falling in love with their place again. It's about people finding through place the enabling constraint, the scale, the human scale, which has also been mentioned, so we can stop talking about the bloody world problematique or the polycrisis or the meta crisis and be in the abstract process of defining everything as a problem and then trying to find a solution. In the moment we talk bioregional, we steer into the skid of the complexity of our situation and make it real by looking at specific places and specific contexts, real people, real ecosystems, real places. And in that minute, what still shows up, the issues that we like to call problems, show up with a face and a name, and through that they show up as a potential, not a problem. And I think that's where I see energy coming out of the regenerative impulse of life into the bioregional movement. And people were saying, like, it popped up, and all these, like literally what I think is life's regenerative impulse is reminding us of the appropriate scale to express our regenerative capacity as a species to heal this planet. And thank you to all of you that you're somehow involved in this. And I think we're just at the beginning of this becoming something that people are understanding as globalization is failing, as capitalism is being counted out. It's in its last 24 years, that's for sure. And in that scary moment of uncertainty, it is also the most sensible way of building community resilience and the capacity to survive whatever is coming at us. So you can convince people also from, if you need to change the language completely, talk with the Ministry of Defense and whatever disaster ministry and say, this is protecting the people for what is possibly coming. It's your responsibility to create basic provisioning of food, water, energy, transport, education, fibers for clothing, as close to home as possible. And in that, there is a antidote towards the economic collapse, because it's the rebuilding of cottage industry at the bioregional scale. Okay, I'll come off my hobby horse now. I've talked too long, sorry.
Well, thank you so much for rounding this out, Daniel, and so much richness that has come in these first two rounds, if you will, to reference some sociocratic language there. And just, I'd like to invite sort of a next round just of cross-pollination between those of you representing these waves. We'll call it the second wave and the third wave now. And continue to adapt our language as our knowledge matures. And a couple of things really struck me in this first round, and I'll just sort of highlight them by some of their actual expressions in reality. One of them is picking up on Tad's idea of that bioregioning is not necessarily about replacing one set of boundaries with another set of boundaries. And then Daniel, you sort of reinforcing that with the idea of bioregioning. So we in the Connecticut River Valley Collaborative renamed ourselves from the Bioregional Collaborative to the Bioregioning Collaborative. And that's something that one of our members, Ben Roberts, has been very sort of purposeful in terms of saying, yes, there's value to doing mapping, but we can't place that as the highest value. So that's sort of one kind of profound issue that I think that could spur some great conversation in this next round. The other is just a question that Laura, you bring up so beautifully of where are you now? Where are you living? So certainly connection to the place that one was born is relevant. And those who maintain connection to where they were born, as Joe talked about with the Ozarks, is incredibly important. But ultimately, each of us can only live or exist in a place at any given time. And so connecting to that place, and in particular, planting roots of love, as Melina mentioned, I think is a fundamentally important practice for bioregioning. So I wanted to offer those sort of two potential areas of discussion for folks to folks within these sort of representing these waves to discuss or bring in other perspectives as you wish. And I also want to note that this is a great moment for folks to start adding questions. There's already some great commentary in the sidebar, but really pose some questions in the sidebar to get us moving into the next round, which is opening it up more broadly. So Melina, I see your hand, and Daniel, I saw you as well. So maybe start there and then move, and in particular, go back to the second wave after that. So Melina, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Bill, and thank you for bringing that Laura's commentary, because what I think that is very, very important in this bioregioning process we are passing through as an evolutionary process. I think that and when I talked about love, I think that it's very important to understand that we need to integrate everything that exists, and that means cities, that means industry, extraction, everything. Like, we really need to open our heart in such a way that we hold the whole humanity. And in order to do that, the first place to connect with is our own being, our own body, our own experience of life. And this is a big issue, because we tend always to go outside. You know, like I have this purpose, and I go outside and I want to do this and do that. But this movement of life through us is actually what we need to really embrace totally. And I think that the most important part to do this work is to embrace our own shame, our own pain, our own, like responsibility of having done many things that we didn't like. And that means like the use of water, the use of territory, like to put concrete in such huge areas and things like that, with much respect, because people who made those things, they were also in shame. They were also in places of looking for validation. Like somebody who is super proud because a bridge, like an engineer or whatever, like this mindset of, I did the bigger bridge. This is a validation necessity, so we really need to embrace our need of validation in order to be able to embrace any engineers or politician or people in power needs of validation. And I think that conversation is very important, especially for the financial part, because people with money, people who for any reason had this huge amount of money, beside scarcity-based mindset territories, and like not having resources to just regenerate or restore ecosystems, or this huge difference in the world that we are looking at is it just needs to have another perspective. It is not just like from the ecologic perspective, you are the bad ones, and from the financial perspective, they are the bad ones, the ecologists. Like we need to really overcome the duality of good and bad. Like and to do that, we need to go inside, like the vortex of evolution, like the toroids of the planet. We need to pass through the center of the toroid, and there is a place where it turns spin. So there is another direction that it turns on. And that point is when we are able to accept the complete experience of the shadow part of ourselves. So we need to embrace the shame we have, the guilt we have inside of us. And if we collectively, we are able to, like building into that, we are creating an attractor in a complex system that just attract another perspective. Like that's why it's bioregioning, because it's like a creation of another perspective, another point of observation of reality. So this is quantum mechanics, but this is like a how we can just see ourselves and connect from another perspective. So we can accept others and their realities from a complete different perspective. So our conversations will be different. So our connections will be different, and we can hold a space for others to see these other perspectives. So the network, it will be healthier, and that creates a very deep root on into the planet, into our bioregion, into our scaling, to our actions. So and it's very important to name, because sometimes we forget that internal process that this is the planet is requiring from us. So that's my perspective. That's what I was just triggered to say.
Thank you so much. So much resonates with that, Melina. Daniel, you had your hand up, and just briefly before passing over to you, thanks to those of you who've added some questions. So there are already several great questions in the sidebar. Neil introduced the practice of using a queue beforehand. That really helps us to track for facilitation. So if you could do that before a question, just write Q : and then write your question. So Daniel, over to you, and then really inviting first folks from what we're now calling the second wave, the impulse starting in the 70s and 80s, maybe chime in after that. But Daniel, let's hear from you and see where it goes.
Maybe just building on that, like, yeah, absolutely, that the inner work is part of the outer work, but it's also important to stay with the outer work and not lose yourself in the inner work. So they're both deeply connected. And so the word love might offer us an opportunity to do both. Because what I've noticed in trying to build alliances here on the island of Mallorca is that when you build alliances to work at landscape scale, the knee-jerk responses are that people want to show what they can do as an alliance and create little projects and like say, what's the low-hanging fruit? What can we already do? And then they fall into their roles, they fall into their specialities and their specialty perspectives as they approach these little projects. And I've just lived through trying to get a particular group to say, let's not do projects, let's learn about the bioregion for an entire year. And all ideas just get onto the ideas list, parked. All solutions get parked. We just learn. And what I mean by learning is to learn the details of the place on all levels: ecological, socially, economically, worldview, history, geology, water, fauna, flora. And through that detail, that actually meet each other, because we can see that some of us hold knowledge in some of those areas. So we begin to value each other in that collaborative network. We all learn something together. So it becomes more of a collective process. And I think this, just to make the bridge back to Donna Meadows, has been invoked in this conversation, and rightly so, because her initial paper for the Balloton Group on living and learning centers was really back then finding that antidote to globalization of saying we need to reorganize around showing the different lenses of all the different disciplines that we have created can be powerful if we shine them onto the specificity of a bioregion, and we challenge them to share what they know to the whole community of that region through art, through, as we were saying, it has to be multimodal. It can't be just an academic conversation. It has to be films, art, dance, music about the beauty of that region. And it's through that knowledge and about that beauty and all the detail of the science and the social things and all the detail of the region, that's when you fall in love with a place. You really fall in love when you deeply know somebody or something. And for me, these two words of falling in love with a place and learning as the primary initial driver, and what I really learned from David with the congresses is having these participatory processes that actually allow people to co-create a story together in real time. And through that also have an embodied experience of collective intelligence and a bigger knowing that a group can have than any individual can have, because that happens when you work in circle like that. And if you haven't experienced it, that hearing yourself voice something with a wisdom that you knew you didn't have before you walked into that circle, it sounds like a concept that these ideas come from the social field. But once you have actually lived through 9 days of Congress, it's not a concept anymore. You understand the power of it. Anyway, curious to hear more voices.
Thank you, Daniel. Let me just open it up to folks in what we're calling the second wave. Anna, David, Laura, Tad, any of you want to chime in here? Yeah, David. Oh, and I think you're still on mute, David. Yeah.
Yes, I am.
There we
yeah,
go.
As I was saying, I'm really riveted by the totality of this discussion, and the thing I keep talking. I use the term eco-holofractal a lot, perhaps, excuse me, perhaps too much, but sorry. Everything really generates everything else in the bioregion, the totality of it. And the spiritual dimension of it is really important. And I'm glad that Joe brought that up. Something really astounding happens. And I've said this before, but when you gather in Congress, when you gather together collectively in the name of an ecologically centered reality, in the name of bioregionalism, it's a whole different dynamic than just basically the usual anthropocentric impetus for gathering together. I wish I could explain it. It is so incredible what happens when you gather in the name, whenever two, in the quoting perhaps the Bible, I did a lot of work in Christian ecology. I know that's hard for some people to relate to, but wherever two or more of you are gathered in the name of Gaia, of the earth, of the bioregion, there is something electrifying that happens in that collectivity, that intentionality. And the bioregion itself, I believe, is, as an organelle of earth, is an entity. And I wanted to bring in Thomas Berry, who said that the bioregion is self-teaching, self-healing, self-actualizing. It is the bioregion itself is an enormous ecological design principle, and to as Daniel was talking about, just learn from it. It teaches us everything we need to know. It's all in there, and it's all woven together in the eco-holofractal of spirituality, of economics, of it's this toroidal quantum reality that is a mirror of the whole universe, as Melinda was talking about. This anyway, I just want to say that all this knowledge that we get from the bioregion, from actually observation, is the root of what we need to do in that home place. And the observation, and then the extrapolation from the observation becomes the practice, and is the root of discoveries of permaculture, of holistic land and resource management of Alan Savory, for instance, of the work of John Todd, of its observation of nature in a clear and deep way, and then extrapolation into the human presence on Earth. And that is the direct pointing that is the power of this. It doesn't really come from a human intermediary or a guru. It comes directly from observation of what's going on in the bioregion, in the processes of Earth. And that's what I feel we gather together when we bring this together under bioregioning and into our assemblies. Thanks.
Thank you so much, David, for sharing some more language for us to use. I think that the eco-holofractal is a profound concept to ruminate on. I'm going to suggest that maybe Anna and now Laura have raised their hands to chime in, to sort of give this wave the voice, and then Joe, going back to you to bring it back to the current wave, if that's good by all of you. So Anna, over to you.
I want to share a small experience. Well, it was small in terms of time because it only lasted 2 years, but it's probably the most profound experience, bioregionally speaking, after the congresses. And that's my work with a team of people in river restoration in Valle de Bravo near Mexico. And we worked in a small watershed of the big watershed. And what really triggered my understanding of the place and loving of the place were two concepts: riparian areas and roads. Riparian meaning the edges of the water called what the waterways, the edges of the river. And at the edges of the rivers or streams are connected with our human roads. And whenever they intersect, that is a red light spot where things can go really bad. And the other thing is, I insist, it helped me learn to understand what micro watersheds are. And two other words, to understand the role of hilltops and ravines. So I'm talking of places of earth, and I encourage you to invite youth in your areas to adopt at least a mile of a water river or a stream, a water course, and try to restore, because it's an opportunity to do all of what we have just mentioned of gather together people. And it's an opportunity to patrol or to walk around edges and to have a map in your hand and do. So I really wanted to share that. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Anna. Laura, over to you, and then back to Joe.
Well, from what I'm hearing from you, I remember that the bioregional philosophy has three principles. One is it's anti-capitalism, no capitalism, no, one. Second, decentralization, no, is that right? Decentralization. And the third one, it's no military, no anti-militarista. The bioregional movement asks to the whole world to get rid of every single gun, arm, fire, whatever. It's against any war. It's well, these are the three principles: anticapitalista, descentralización, y antimilitarismo. I just want to remind these things. I think you understand me, even though I speak in Spanish, but you is the same. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. Joe, and then Sam. And then I'm going to check in for making sure that we've heard all voices from these waves. I think, Tad, that would give you an opportunity to speak, and then open it up to questions. We've got a few questions already in the queue. So Joe, and then Sam.
I wanted to speak to the experience of the bioregional activation process that we have been bringing into different communities in the last 2 years. Because for many people in the world, they don't yet have the experience of what this conversation is about. And we observe that simply by reminding people that they live in a place, that their place is already organized, and that the organization of their place has multiple existing nested levels of reality. And I want to give the example of the Colorado River Basin, because most people who pay attention to the Colorado River Basin will tell you it is the textbook example of how to completely fuck up a river. It's like a shit show of bad management. To turn the entire 8% of the continental United States into pipes and bathtubs and create state battles with each other for water rights, to destroy the whole thing with sacred landscapes everywhere. That's what the Colorado River Basin has become. And when we did a bioregional activation tour of the Colorado River, we had powerful tools like satellite remote sensing, scientific visualization. Specifically, we were using Google Earth, but we would take images of the places we were, and we would show people, here you are in Grand Junction, where these two rivers, the Gunnison River and the Colorado River, come together. But if you zoom out, you'll see, oh, this actually drains down into Canyonlands, where it eventually meets with the Green River. And if you go up, you'll see all these watersheds coming out of the Rocky Mountains, and people could see nested levels of reality. The other thing that was really powerful was to visit multiple communities in the same landscape system at the same time. So in that same trip, when we would go to Carbondale, Colorado, on the North Fork, the Roaring Fork River, which drains into the Colorado at Glendale, at Glenwood Springs, we would say, well, look, we're here today, but tomorrow we're in Paonia. But then in 4 days, we're going to be in Grand Junction. And we would show them on the map where these places are. By the way, we repeated this pattern in Cascadia last year in October of moving through the landscape to neighboring communities that were connected by landscape patterns. For the Colorado River, it was branches of the hydrological system that form the Colorado Basin. The reason I say that most people don't live in the reality of what we're talking about was the absolute exhilaration that we experienced in every room for people to spend their first 15 minutes saying, you think you can regenerate the Colorado River? You're insane. This is stupid. That's impossible. I came to see who this charlatan is. But then 15 minutes later, after going through the exercise of seeing the nested levels of reality with maps and hearing the story of the same conversation in different communities in the same landscape system, they realized that they were already organizing around this large-scale pattern, but they didn't have the imagination of it. And bringing the imagination of it changed everything. It was like, wow, it's actually possible to regenerate the entire Colorado Basin. Because the Colorado Basin, as Melina said before, and as Laura said before, and as Daniel said before, it's just regeneration. It's regenerative patterns that have been playing out the whole time. But we didn't have the imagination to see it. And so I wanted to name that process because the process of reawakening imagination connected to my place that is part of a fractal, or as David said, as a holonic or a whole part structure. That is reality, but a lot of people don't have a discourse of that reality. And it's not hard to give it to them because now we have really powerful satellite images and maps. And so we can actually show it very easily. Whereas, I mean, I remember it was around the year 2000 when Google Maps started showing satellite view, where you could see your place. You know, you could have the blue marble effect for your own house. It's only about 20 years old. And for those who don't know, the first observational satellites were put into space in 1971. That's not an accident of time. That bioregionalism took off in the mid-1970s. This is not an accident. This Gaia consciousness being enabled by new visualization tools, including the stories of visualizing ourselves as part of a larger system. Like when I'm in Grand Junction, I'm connected to Las Vegas. When I'm in Grand Junction, I'm connected to the Sea of Cortez, where the water used to run into the Pacific Ocean. Hasn't since 1967, except for one moment for about a week. And so people can start to see that connection as real. And I just want to name that the power of awakening bioregional dreaming in people through parallel conversations and neighboring landscapes that are connected to larger landscape realities. That this is part of the new wave of bioregional organizing. And what I think it will lead to is to new bioregional congresses, which is those of us doing this now. David, we need your help. Laura and Anna, we need your help. Tad, we need your help. Yes, I've talked with people like Lance Scott, who drew the diagrams for the Olympia Bioregional Congress in Cascadia in 1986. We're connecting with some of the other elders. We youngers need you elders to tell us, how did you organize this before? Because we're about to organize it again with you. And we're starting to do it. Like Samantha said, organizing the finance is a big part of it. And I'm sure she'll speak to that in a moment. But organizing the story of it. So part of my background is I worked with George Lakoff doing strategic framing. The strategic framing is Gaia shows us what it means to be regenerative by showing us we're already nested levels of regenerative processes. And that's a really big part of what Daniel spoke to, what David's been talking about, and what has been mentioned many times here. So I just wanted to describe how we reawaken the story for people who didn't know they were already in it. That these satellite images and these ways of basically doing Chautauqua types of traveling stories, like a circus moving through town, is a really powerful addition. and something that complements the bioregional congresses beautifully. It does not replace them. We absolutely need them, but it's bringing us back to them with a new wave of younger people and more energy. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Let's hand it over to Samantha, and then Tad, we would give you a voice before we open up to the questions. So Sam, over to you.
Thanks, Bill. Yeah, so much there, Joe. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I have been so inspired by watching you and Penny go on these activation tours and hearing about what comes out of it. And I think we need many more people to be doing this type of activation around the world. And yeah, the eco-holofractal language that David shared with us also really resonates with me. And my work has often focused on kind of global level systems changing where money is flowing from the top down. And with this book that was published on the solstice, I'm looking at how to also organize regenerative projects in place so that they can meet these flows of capital coming down from very centralized pools of resources. And so my work has me kind of moving between the hyper local and the global. And Joe, I love that you talked about Gaia consciousness and the potential with having so many new amazing tools to sense our being, right? Our earth. We can develop a deeper understanding for what's happening at a larger scale. And James Lovelock's book, Nova Scene, talks about this. Also, Gaia 2.0 by Bruno Latour, another piece that I really love. And I think for me, bioregioning is about, yes, deeply connecting to the place that you live, also maybe the place that you were born, all the places that you have really special relationships to, and helping those places to heal and helping those places to see themselves and reimagine what can be there and, develop new stories. But also, can we develop a new type of indigeneity that is at a global scale, where we are earthlings, we are planetary beings, we're taking care of the whole earth? And in that question, what comes up for me is that there's a need right now for the most exciting, beautiful stories from places to be shared globally, including templates, tools, and processes that are enabling that beauty to come up in a place, right? There are, a handful of bioregions around the world that are perhaps more advanced in their organizing. There's greater coherence. There's more, of a long-term vision that many people in the bioregion subscribe to and are working towards than in other places. And I feel in this moment that there's a need to really uplift and tell those stories, including in continental scale bioregional congresses. And this is something that my friend David here and Carrie, who's also on the call, and some other colleagues have been talking about the potential to start again the North American Continental Bioregional Congress, where we can bring together all the folks that are doing bioregioning, all the folks that want to be doing bioregioning, and learn from each other, and then go back to our places and bring the best of what is happening elsewhere to our place, and share the best of what we're doing at our place with people elsewhere. So it's kind of this global, local, connective tissue through the bioregional movement that I feel like continental scale bioregional congresses and global conversations like this one can support. So yeah, those are some thoughts.
Thanks so much, Sam. Tad, sort of finishing out this round, and then folks who've asked questions, I see 3 of you, Neil, Sebastian, and Jennifer, so far is what I see. If you'd be ready to go off mute and voice your questions, that'd be great. So Tad, over to you first.
I have perhaps 1,000 thoughts and ideas and perspectives that have popped during this session. And what I have learned fairly late in life is that when I have so much to say, it's probably best that I stay quiet. So instead of adding to any of the amazing things that have been said so far, I would like to give a poem, because culture is so important. It is really the foundation, and one of the things that I find so beautiful about this movement is its deep, deep appreciation and need for culture as our interweaving fabric. This poem is by a friend of mine, Garth Harwood. It was written at the 3rd Continental Bioregional Congress in Squamish, British Columbia. But it was written for his home bioregion, the Klamath-Siskiyou. One brief little foreword, it's called a Pampas Grass Love Poem. And for those who don't know Pampas grass, it is a clumping perennial from Australia that was introduced to the West Coast in the 50s and is hated as an invasive species throughout much of the Shasta and Cascadia bioregions. A Pampas Grass Love Poem. We had better learn to love the Pampas grass. The best of us try to be like it, invasive by habit and history, and finding ourselves on ravaged soil, we start to rebuild it slowly. The work days of our lives doing what coarse pampas spheres do too, adding instead of subtracting in the great breakdown. Neither life will count for much when done, except that others follow similarly. And the soil, the richness of life returns at a pace unbearable to human thought. The new land will have no place for us, nor for pampas. Pampas grass creates topsoil, but cannot sprout in it because it cannot compete with the new plants that brings. So we, land and culture building, create a new people who would not understand our killing origins and our long tolerance of greed. We too will die out to be replaced by something native. In this day, to love the redwood forest is to love past the trees to the soil and its builders. And we had better learn to love the pampas grass.
Wow.
Thank you so much, Tad. I've shared that, Tad shared that with me, and I've shared it on my LinkedIn profile. So I'll dig back into my feed and post that if I can. And there have been calls for posting these resources that are coming in the sidebar. And yes, we at r3.0 will do that. So it's time to really open up more broadly into the open dialogue. And we've gotten questions from Neil, Sebastian, Jennifer, and I think that I discerned one. It wasn't listed as a question, but from Carrie. So it'd be great if each of the 4 of you could just go off mute and actually voice the questions, and then let's listen for as the questions are being asked. I'd ask the waivers, so to speak, to listen for elements that you'd like to respond to, but it'd be nice to get all of this out on the table, all the questions out on the table first. So Neil, you first, then I think Sebastian was the next that came in with a couple of questions, Jennifer, and then Carrie, I believe you had one. Over to you, Neil.
Thanks, Bill. Honored to be here with multiple waves going on. And Tad, what a fantastic poem. I think it's a little bit cruel, though, to lead into a guy from Australia, from down under, with one about invasive grasses and learning to love, given the presentation I gave to Joe and the design school the other night about the fact that they spat me out because they couldn't take my invasive roots. But apart from that, I loved it. It was fantastic. My question, and it's important in the context of the next wave of bioregionalism becoming the planning process. How many of the first and second waves have been successful in having their initiatives codified and or written into law at local, state, federal planning governance process level? Because we're walking in two worlds at the moment, and the property system and the economic system prevents most of what we know needs to be done. So I'm interested in that. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Let's get all of the questions out there and then get responses. So Sebastian, you had a couple of questions, and then Jennifer next, and Carrie.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you everyone for this wonderful forum here. I had a question in regards to the assumptions which we hold towards bioregioning, maybe some of the projections, the hopes that are embedded, and especially in regards to how do we play with the tension of the local and the global. So thank you again.
Great. And Sebastian, you also had a question about indicators, if I'm correct.
Building on what Neil was mentioning earlier on the first and the second wave, to assess how do we define success, and if so, what are the indicators of success? I found that maybe quite relevant in the context of r3.0. So thanks for mentioning that.
Great, thanks, Sebastian. Jennifer, if you're able to go off mute, if you could voice your question, and then Carrie next. And I'll repost these questions in the sidebar so that they'll be visible to folks. Jennifer?
Everyone. So my question, with much appreciation for all of you, is has to do with how so much of the energy to act comes from the tender human heart. And I hear the desire to hold the slowing down. So my question, and I find that slowing down also helps us with true seeing and true listening, that deeper knowing. So I'm going to read my question. Slowing down and holding the inner life with care brings up a lot of difficult and painful emotions for many people, the kind of stuff that shuts us down and draws people into separation. So how are you holding that kind of tender space in your gatherings, and how are you embracing tender humanity in ways that help people to work together? It's another way of voicing it, instead of breaking down the processes. And that's big questions, but maybe there's some pieces in there you'd like to highlight. And thank you so much.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. So Carrie, maybe a last one. I think I'm discerning that what you said in your latest post was there was a question in there. So we'll have that. And then Tad, I had seen your hand up. So maybe you first in the response round, and then we'll take it from there. And I'll be reposting the questions in the chat. So Carrie, over to you.
Hi, I think, are you talking about me, Carrie? I know there are a couple Carries on the call.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Yes, I'm talking about you, Carrie Norton.
Okay, good morning. Yeah, and just full of gratitude and sitting in my place outside. So apologies, I haven't been on camera earlier. I did put a question mark there, and the question gets to the heart, I suppose, of one of the challenges I think we all face, which is how to collaborate well. And I'm not saying that we're not doing that, but just for example, I'm a student of each of these, of several of the speakers today, with enormous gratitude and respect. And I'm just wondering, there may not be space for it today, but just to the extent that you are yourselves trying to find ways to connect your work to each other and to weave, and because I'm spending a lot of time in each of like at least three, maybe more like 10 different classrooms, and wanting to synthesize and connect. And so just wondering how you all are thinking about that.
Great. Thanks so much, Carrie, Jennifer, Sebastian, and Neil. Tad, over to you first. I think that you had raised your hand during Neil's question. So over to you, and I'm slowly posting these questions online. So Tad first, and then Joe.
One quick response to Neil. The Natural Resources Defense Service, NRCS, is a federal agency in the US that is now organized in much of the country by watershed. And one of its roles is to help to coordinate farming in each of their particular regions and promote regenerative practices. It's not their only role. It's horribly underfunded, but it's a start.
Thank you, Tad. Joe, over to you, and then we'll see who wants to respond next. And Joe, if you could just mention which question you're responding to, or which questions. And I see Anna and Laura up next.
I'll very briefly roll through all 4 questions, and I'll be brief because, as you know, I would have a lot to say about all 4 questions. Just wanted to give the example of the Salish Sea in the Pacific Northwest of North America as a policy framework that has emerged around the scientific basis of a freshwater marine ecosystem with many watersheds, that it took them multiple years to get that recognized as a scientifically legitimate management system and creating the maps and renaming of it and so on, just as an example of decades of work leading to a policy framework that is now modifying the US-Canada border because the Salish Sea spans across these 2 fictitious nation states. And that's just an example of one of many that could be named around policy frameworks that are going to help lay the groundwork for the new world. For Jennifer's question, I wanted to comment on part of the work that we do in the Design School for Regenerating Earth is a deep collaboration with my partner, Penny Heipel. And Penny has a background in body-based somatic healing and trauma work. And so we have a very strong focus within the way that we build up conversations around bioregional learning centers and governance ecosystems and funding, together with the inner space and the inner work of storytelling, heart circles, deep processes of learning how to somatically connect with our bodily experience moment to moment. And we find that if you're not doing both, you're not doing the work. And so it's just everywhere. Everywhere in our work, we must be holding the inner and the outer. As we'd heard before, really emphasizing what Daniel had said about the outer becomes the counterbalance and the reintegration of the inner, because people can spin off into consciousness work and never do anything. And so we definitely need both. So just naming the significance of that. And then to Sebastian's questions about indicators, just to name a couple of really quick examples. Are you building more soil and more biotic diversity or not? Are you creating more corridor connectivity of ecosystems? Are you creating more well-being measurements within your human systems? I would say there are many, many, many indicators. The challenge for most of them is that they're not organized around geophysical systems. So the beginning of organizing them around things like watersheds or other ecological and geophysical systems will go a long way. And then this leads to my response to Carrie's question. Those of us in leadership roles, how can we create better frameworks of collaboration? And I just want to name a friend of mine, Steve Melville, has been working on the deep hacking of the technology space for how we get around this problem of all the privatized mobile apps. Instead of Facebook has your data and Telegram has your data and Mighty Networks has your data, and maybe you could use Hilo and maybe you could it's confusing as hell. We actually have to go back to basic principles and re-envision our communications infrastructure. And the closest place to seeing the core architecture of that is in Holochain and related things. But just to say, there's a whole world of work around the technology piece of this to enable us to coordinate better. But the human part is, are the people in leadership roles in the regenerative movement, are we holding the intention of integrity and coherence? If we're not, we're probably undermining it consciously or unconsciously. And if we are holding it, we're probably supporting growing coherence. And the best way to support growing coherence and all of its complexity is to collaborate around large-scale landscape systems. Because large-scale landscape systems are inherently coherent to themselves. So we as regenerative practitioners become coherent to each other by finding coherence in our relationship to these places. And so I think the real opportunity for all of us in our many different leadership roles is to look for the shared coherence at the landscape system or the regional scale. And that'll guide us into the deeper coherence with each other. And it's a road we have to walk. It won't happen instantaneously. But I know that every one of us on this call, as you can see, we're all giving like little hat tips to each other. We're like, oh, and what they said is great. What they said is great. We want this coherence. We all want this coherence. And so we need your help. Those of you who are learners in these spaces, or if you define yourselves as learners, those of us in leadership roles, we're learners too. How can you cross-pollinate and build coherence between the different spaces? It's like everyone has a responsibility to build coherence wherever we are in our different systems. And those are the comments I would add. And as I said, much more to say, but I'll stop there. So thank you so much.
Well, just as a handoff here, I will note that this conversation that we're in right now was not accidental. It was seeded by a recognition of the value of coherence building. So I'll leave it at that and give space for, we've got in line here. So Anna, Laura, Melina, and Daniel have raised their hands. And then David, I see you raising your hand, and Sam. And we've got about 20 minutes left of official time. So we'll just giving that reminder of the container that we're in. Daniel, David, it looks like you're wanting to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I don't want to break any continuity in the process whatsoever, but this is something I would, at some point before we close, I would like to get a few minutes to outline a project that I would like collaboration with from folks on the call who are interested. And that is, I am working on unpacking and translating the Congress experience for application to our synthesized waves for future reference and use. And so I want to do that translation process. I'm working on it, and I want to reconfigure and translate the Congress process of days of yore into the present, so that we might use it as a tool. So that's, I would like to just, I kind of said what I wanted to do, but anyway, there's that. Somewhere in there, there's a couple of minutes. That's it. Just sorry for the interruption of the flow. I just okay.
Thanks, David. So let's hear from Anna, Laura, Melina, Daniel, and Samantha, and then check back in with David if we need to round that out. So Anna, over to you.
Very briefly, I would like to address David some question of how successful have we been in terms of law. And I would say the packaging and wrapping initiative of law that we promoted all over the country has been successful, at least in Mexico City, where packaging and wrapping has been regulated and supermarkets cannot give plastic bags anymore. And we have the biggest compost plant in Latin America working. The other important turned out that we fought legally was to found the councils of watersheds, and they exist all over the country now. And the third example is the one I mentioned, the corn trial to protect native corn. And we have been able to stop the commercial growing of transgenic corn for 10 years. And about the question of Carrie, of the challenge of how to collaborate, I would like to stress that at least our 16 gatherings of what we call the Vision Council, Guardians of the Earth, have been done putting together a common goal and blending in a crucible our talents, our skills, our connections, our collaboration, our donation, our teamwork, and searching for artists, teachers, students, and asking help, local artists, students, and people. So that's in few words. Thanks.
Thanks, Laura.
Okay. We'll continue with Anna's talk. There are also some other laws that we have changed that has changed the story of the whole Mexico nation. It's like the first law we changed, it was the disposals. Now, before there was not we don't have any law that you have to separate and recycle. And through the Consejo de Ediciones, through the bioregional movement, we get to change this law in Mexico, and now 120 million of people has to do this. So this is something that is coming from the bioregional movement. Also, we work in the rights of nature, and we get Mexico City and some other provinces as Colima, Guerrero, and State of Mexico, all these provinces, now they already have the rights of nature in their laws. That doesn't mean this is coming into the daily life, but at least they're in the laws, and one day will come reality. And we also changed the law of energy, because before there was only considerations about petroleum in the Mexican laws. So we work and work and work with the Minister of Energy, and we changed the law, putting renewable energies as a right of the humans in our law. And I think some others, but I think Anna talked about the others. So the bioregional movement can really go farther their own bioregion and get changed and get to different levels, no? But the base is a bioregional base. It's always the people that it's always the small groups, with a big compromise that get things changed. It's not big groups doing things. Sometimes we need to gather the big groups for something else, but the real change is made by little groups and people with a great compromise, okay? I want you to remind that you don't need a bunch of people. You need good people and very compromised. And about the congresses that you were talking about, also Anna talked about it a little bit. For us, it's very important that you have a topic in common with all the people, no? This could be environment, that the place that you are going to go and do your congress, it's good that there is something you want to be resolved, so that gathers everybody, that it's important for everybody. So this is nice. So the people has a reason to go to the congresses. And the congresses, we all have to come with this attitude of solidarity, and they become really a love experience. Once you get to a congress, you just feel so in love with yourself and with the others that it's un enamoramiento colectivo, a collective love. You just love everybody there, and this opens you a lot, isn't it? Look, so nice. And also, we have to go with compassion. And one thing, when you are organizing a congress, at the first, there is a lot of people saying, yes, I want to do. But with the days, the people start coming less and less, and then there is just 3-4 people that keep the fire and keep on going. Please don't leave it. And then the next is going to be once again 10, 15, and then you arrive to 200. No, so it's a you. Remember this always. When you start, it's very high. Then in the process goes a little bit down, but you keep going. Be very ¿cómo se dice? Terco, stubborn. You be stubborn. It's okay, stubborn here. So you keep on going, and then you start the people coming again. And when you got the Congress and you leave it, and of course, if you stay the whole time, because that's a great experience to build that little town, to build the community, to live the experience, and then to finish it. So when you have the whole process in your life, you really change. It's something on your mind change, and you go back to your daily life and something's changed, and you are just wanting to have the next Congress.
Mm. Thank you, Laura. Melina, Daniel, and Samantha, and then we'll check in with David. And we're about 11 minutes until the end. We, of course, will stay on the line here at r3.0 until it finishes out. Melina, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for the questions. I just was observing the different needs and the different person from which the questions came. And it was a very particular difference between the male questions and the female questions. And I think that that's something that we need to be aware of, that because sometimes from the male perspective is always something that we need to do and influence and bright, and this is like a like the direction of things, like the actions of. But I want to acknowledge the feminine capacity and need of so much need of this holding space for plants to grow, holding space for silence, and holding space for deep collaboration. And I think that that capacity of lighting that in ourselves will give us the possibility to see leadership as a phenomenon, not as a role, but as a phenomenon, as something that emerges, so we can hold together the person who will do something. And this is all also leading me to the reflection of indicators, because as Samantha mentioned, beauty is an indicator of bioregional regeneration, but it's an internal indicator. So how does it feel for people in bioregion? I want to live in a beautiful place and have beautiful relationships, and this is one thing from the inside of the bioregion. But from the outside of the bioregion, which is the place from normally money comes from, it's a different perspective. It's an external indicators that are needed. So as Joe mentioned, it's almost as from the external perspective, we need the list of a checklist of biosphere, like the whole biosphere in a checklist. And that's the indicator, the external indicator. But we can, have the market indicators, for example, the carbon sequestration, biodiversity, I don't know, no violence, no internal family violence, like these kind of things. But from the inside, what I have learned from my contact with several bioregions in Colombia, from which I have learned how bioregioning, like I was just observing and understanding how it's happening already, what is already there. And we made this experience of a self-evaluation process, collective self-evaluation, from which the criteria of how life was emerging in these bioregions, how they feel, was the collective self-reference indicators of bioregioning. And that evaluation, it was really appreciative, and it gave a lot of life force, because they were able to see themselves as regenerators from what they already were doing. So it's kind of validating their own need, their own way of solving their needs, and so on. So that's something that we really need to be aware of, especially seeing the trustability, accountability, and all these abilities that the financial, the money, the capital needs to see in a bioregion in order to open flows of resources. We really need to go into a perspective of what is life emerging in a region from the inside and what's from the outside. So that kind of different perspectives is super important to differentiate, because we cannot ask, or the capital cannot ask a bioregion to just be as they want. They can measure, let's say, or they can see, you know, like they had to be this internal and external perspective, which is a feminine and masculine perspective just getting well along together. And the last thing I want to say about the collaboration part is that when we are able to hold the space for all these things that happen that they're not good, it's like we don't need to go forward looking for the good parts. We need to hold the space for everything. And I have already talked about this many times, but when I facilitated a community process in which there was so much rage, but rage in a community is vital force, is the expression or something, or an indignation, you know, like and it is very, very important to hold the space for what is really going on, like just holding space. Like it's not about being the brighter and having all the clarity on how everything needs to be. It's just being able to hold the space of what it is. And that's something that if one person is able in a community to do that, it changes the energy of everything. And that make us to vibrate in a bigger resonance with the mystic and magic things that happens in a community and in a gathering. Yeah.
Thank you, Melina. Daniel, and then Samantha, and then Tad, I see you've got a hand up as well, but Daniel and Samantha, I think will round us out for the folks who haven't spoken yet in these waves, and then Tad and David will check back in with you.
Yeah, so much to say, so little time left. What needs to be said? I mean, with regard to, I heard something in Neil's question that was also about how do we make sure not just what has gone into policy and what has actually happened beyond our bubble, but actually the issue that we are in the bubble. And that when we're talking bioregions, it can be a gathering of, no offense, the woolly sock brigade. And how do we go beyond that? How do we, and that's the enabling constraint of the bioregion, to say, when you're in this region, you're part of this conversation, even if you're on the political right. And I just want to highlight that for those who don't know, in Germany, if you look at the Wikipedia entry on bioregionalism, it is heavily associated with the AfD, the right wing. And talking about bioregional things can get you on the observation list of the National Secret Service. So this meme is already being undermined by the alt-right movement, while it is a meme that can actually take the wind out of the sails of the alt-right movement, because it is a meme of coming back to, or a process of coming back to place, to valuing traditions, to valuing story of place, to celebrating the farmers and the woodworkers and the primary producers again, all those things that are the disenfranchised ruralities that are the hunting grounds for alt-right ideologists. That one just came out, sorry, but I think it's important for us to be really aware of that. And in a similar way, I think if we, yes, we need the processes that Melina was just talking about. But we also need the really heady, weird, whatever, let's do a 3-horizon mapping of how can this region transition. Oh, you want to talk carbon counting and reducing carbon on this region? Okay, let's have a conversations. All of these are entry points. All of those are people who are trying to care. And what I heard in Laura saying early on, I heard it in Joe's way of working in different territories, and many of us have said it. I often speak about giving oxygens to the embers of regeneration that are already present in a place. The fire hasn't gone out yet. There are people caring, loving, sharing, supporting, healing, nurturing on all levels, inner, outer, all of that. And that is life's regenerative impulse. And it's not about join our movement and can you sign up to these 3 pamphlets and blah, blah. That's the old second wave organizing style of anti-something. We can't build a movement on anti-this, anti-that with a bunch of isms connected. Honoring that at that time, that was important work. But let's be careful with not presenting this yet again as a movement in contrast. This is a movement that is literally coming back to life, coming back to place, coming back to community, coming back to life's regenerative impulse working through us, like we all have said in different ways. And I'm just happy it's happening. And with regard to the question, are we not collaborating more? This is a dangerous place that we're in here right now. We're not working in analog ways, in physically embodied ways in the bioregion that we're connected in. We're in cyber world. And part of my reason why I can't collaborate with so many of the loving friends that are out there doing their work is because I want to limit to some extent how much I spend in this space and how much I spend with my hands in the soil and my whole being in a community circle. And so it's not necessarily, oh, they're not communicating or not collaborating. There must be an issue. Of course, we have different styles. Wonderful. Like, I'm glad we have different styles, the different people that are offering learning spaces in this, because if any of them pretend that they know what they're doing 100% and their way is the right way, well, I would be watching out because I don't know if I know what I'm doing. I just share my learning so far. And I think if we all in that spirit celebrate that diversity and hold space for the possibility that maybe we will have gatherings like, and I love the idea of creating that enabling constraint of saying, if you're serious about this gathering, dedicate 9 days to it. Be there and let it be a process that will change you for the rest of your life. And I for that kind of gathering, I'm willing to collaborate. I'm even willing to travel. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Samantha, I wanted to invite you to round out all of our speakers. And Tad, I see you've got your hand up and David mentioned something, but Samantha, let's hear from you first, please.
I'll be very brief because I have to hop to another call, but this has been such an amazing conversation. I really appreciate r3.0 holding this container and inviting all of us to be here today. My response to the question about how we better weave the various efforts happening, right? Carrie mentioned all the classrooms that she's hanging out in these days is through conversations like this, through in-person gatherings, through, you know, folks attending activation tours in bioregions that are not theirs, or congresses in bioregions that are not theirs. I think there's a lot of potential for us to create synergies between the work that each of us on this call is holding, and I'm deeply committed to radical collaboration with all of you. And my response to the question about indicators is that the best indicators for success of bioregioning have to come from people living in relationship to place, that they have to be local. And maybe we could also ask their neighboring bioregions how healthy their rivers are, and their animals that are migrating into the bioregion next door. So those are my quick thoughts on that. Appreciate you all and looking forward to more soon.
Thanks so much, Samantha. And thanks to everyone. We recognize that folks may need to drop off. So please, if you need to do so, but we'll just keep the line open for at least giving Tad an opportunity to chime in, and then we'll check back in with David. He had mentioned maybe voicing something and then close things out then. So Tad, over to you.
The Planet Drum Foundation has been mentioned in the chat here and perhaps in this conversation once or twice, but they have acted as the vessel of bioregional knowledge and writing for 50 years. And I just want to acknowledge that work. I'm sorry that Judy Goldhaft isn't here with us now, but anyone wanting to pursue sort of the history of the movement, that would be a really good place to go.
Thank you, Tad. And we did have some chiming in from the Planet Drum work, Carrie, I believe, the other Carrie with a K. David, over to you for some picking up on what you said to begin with, and any last words.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. What I'm working on right now, and I invite collaboration on and help, is to take, as I mentioned before, the experience of the previous Congress and that particular model or that paradigm, and basically kind of listing the attributes of it, which are happen on a number of different levels. I've identified probably 15 levels that the Congress has operated on, and kind of coterminously, and laying out those kind of elements in a generic way, and then looking into what is the reality or the process of the fusion of the waves with regard to in place person-to-person congressing. So I call it a translation process from what has happened in the past, find out what's appropriate to the present, and then try to create a functional or a workable, at least draft model for in-person congressing in the present, with reference to the extraordinary experience of the earlier Congresses of the first wave. So anyone who is interested in collaborating on that, and I will be reaching out to folks in that as time goes on, and to try to put something out as soon as possible that might be useful for people who are looking at this potential for assembly.
Thank you,
Yeah,
David.
can I just throw in something really quickly here?
Yes, please, Joe.
I think we may be approaching the time for our first planetary bioregional congress. That will take time to build toward, but I think that it's actually something that all of us who are holding an interest in organizing our bioregions should be feeling into. What is the reasonable on-ramping time to a planetary bioregional congress? Because look at where the planet is, and look at the business as usual scenarios of limits to growth, which we're tracking with disturbing accuracy. We don't have very much time left where we can secure that it is possible to travel planetary wide. That may not last much longer. It might not, we just cannot know. So I want to name that into this conversation, that bioregional organizing, yes. Continental organizing, yes. Multi-continent clusters like the Americas, the eagle and the condor, yes. And also planetary. So I just wanted to name that if there is a time to do it, we're entering that time now.
Joe, good idea. I just thought that might be something that one could do at Bellagio and ask the Rockefeller Foundation to fund. So let's dream into that a bit.
Yeah.
Can I
David,
just say something on that? I'm sorry.
Yeah, David, over to you.
Can
I know
Okay,
we
sorry,
this
I don't
came
want to
up in our
interrupt
last
anything.
conversation.
I don't want to take too much time, but I proposed that in our first gathering of the first wave, the idea of a planetary Congress, and basically it's interesting to me that at Congress number 10 in 2009, I had a session in which we talked about the idea of a planetary bioregional Congress then, and I've been working on it in my mind ever since, and I feel it's starting to. I feel a quickening here in the great toroidal flows. So that is also part of the conversation about the translation of the Congress modality, or the Congress ecoholofractal. So I am really excited about this. I want to discuss it with these things with whoever is interested, and I will be reaching out, about the Planetary Congress and about the translation process for the in-person assemblies. So thank you.
Thank you, David. And I really want to thank all of you in the waves. We'll call them the second wave and the third wave. Now, thank you so much for being so generous with your time, your experience, and your perspectives, your voices, your love. And also thank you to everyone who has participated in this, and everyone who will be watching this couldn't participate in time and in real time. Thank you very much. I think we're all collaborating together on this bioregioning approach to a way of re-inhabiting the earth that we love. So thank you so much. We'll be sharing the resources from this on our website, Vimeo channel. LinkedIn posts will be the best way to keep up to date with us. So thanks, everyone.
So that means in English and Spanish that whatever was in the chat, you will copy and share.
We will, the chat we will share as well. Yes, Anna.
It's impressive. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care, all.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias, Bill. Mucho gusto,
Bye.
Laura, Ana.
Guys.
Luego hablamos. Chao.